Okay, so hi class, and welcome to the second part of the integumentary system, right? So, we already did pigments. Great. We're gonna talk about hair. Most of you are aware of hair, probably, hopefully. Okay. You don't have it some places, so it's all over the body except for like palms, soles of your feet, lips, nipples, and certain parts of the external genitalia. Everywhere else has some hair. It might be really, really fine, it might be light, but you've got some other places. What's the point? Sorry, am I recording? Yeah, I am recording. So I realized, like, just for the record, with anatomy, not everything has to have a point. Some things just exist, right? But does hair serve any function besides, I don't know, looking cool? Catch bacteria, somehow be protective? Oh, like eyebrows? Eyebrows do... Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Like internal hairs, yes. We're talking about like body hair. What's the point of it? Warmth. That's what everybody says. It does actually help keep you a little bit warmer, but that shouldn't be like your winter warmth plan, right? Like, well, I'll just grow my hair out long, right?
Wasn't it more for like protection?
But it's also supposed to help from protect against physical trauma. Though you've got to have an impressive amount of hair. Like, if you get a brick dropped in your head, you better have an impressive amount of hair to stop that.
Oh no, I was talking like for like our ancestors.
That
would make them look bigger and whatnot.
You still can do that a little bit, right? It's more impressive for like cats,
Yeah.
but your hair does stand on end when you're scared, and you presumably look bigger, and you would look bigger if you had more hair. Yeah. The only thing it's really helping with now, I mean, so yes, it does help with warmth. It actually, even the like little hairs here, help with warmth a tiny bit because you can like trap heat closer. Your book says it's going to protect against physical trauma to your head. Don't try this. Be like, I'll shave half my head, drop a rock. Actually, do try this if you ever need an experiment. Not a big rock. You're doing a self-design experiment in lab eventually. Probably when we're all online. It's supposed to protect a little bit. Shield skin from sunlight. Again, you need to have more. The one that's actually helpful a little bit is if something is crawling on your skin and it moves the hairs, you can feel that, right? You can feel that creepy crawly and you're like, get it off, right? That actually does legitimately help. So here's a picture of it. This we've got cut crossways. There's a lot going on. Right. I was gonna say we'll see this today in lab, but now I'm really, really interested in trying to do a more interesting lab than skin. So, you've got sign parts. Okay. You've got the cuticle here in the middle. Do I have words to describe this? Right. You've got the cuticle here in the middle. There's the cortex, there's medulla. Medulla shows up in anatomy bunches of times. It's the word medulla. That's good. Out on the outside here, this is the part, if you ever see shampoo commercials, where they show it like a million times magnified, right? They're like, sleek hair, blah, blah, blah. You're looking at you're looking at the wall here. So you've got these dead keratinized cells, and right, this is why I should follow my notes, because otherwise I get distracted. Okay, dead keratinized cells. Just because they're dead doesn't mean they're not useful. If it's still like inside the hair follicle, it's still alive, but once it's out and you can see it, it's dead. Which is why it doesn't hurt to cut your hair, right? Like, if it gets pulled, that hurts. But cutting your hair doesn't hurt, right? There's keratin in your skin. Hair is also part of the integumentary system. I have a really hard time with multi-syllabic words, apparently. It's a slightly harder version, all right? It's The skin version's a little bit softer. Hair version's a lot tougher, which is good because while your skin will flake off if you rub it, you probably never, if you're rubbing your hair, it doesn't like flake chunks off, right? You can pull hair out, but the hair itself doesn't get thinner. Does that distinction make sense? The shaft is the part you can see. It's above the follicle, and the root is inside the scalp. That's where it's actually getting keratinized. It's getting tougher. And here we go. Medulla is the core. It's got some air spaces. The cortex is the thing that surrounds it. Cortex also shows up in biology a lot. Anybody know what it means? You don't have to, but just... It's in the brain too, right? The like outside layer. It means bark, like tree bark. So yeah, so it's saying you got the medulla, the inside part, the cortex around it, and then the cuticle, again, is over here. Oh, we don't really care. The hair is pigmented using the same pigments as the skin. Well, most of it. It's by melanin. There are a couple different types: yellow, rust, brown, and black. And you can use those in different combinations, right? So there's not just 4 hair colors. If you've got gray or white hair, that's the absence of dye, of pigment in it. I don't know if you know this, but often gray hair is thicker than hair that's normally pigmented. If you're starting to get gray hairs, you might notice. You'd be like, huh, it feels a little bit thicker. It's because you start ending up with air bubbles in there as well, and that adds some volume to it. I'm going fast. Is this okay? We're fine? Okay, here's the picture. And as Brody said, you can stand your hair on end if you really want to. This is a hair follicle. The hair bulb is this little part right here. Looks kind of like a bulb you'd plant in the ground, like a tulip or something. The hair root is still in the scalp, right? And out here, once we hit out, it's the shaft. The hair follicle receptor, do I have a picture of it? I don't. Well, it's here. It wraps around the bulb, and that's why when hair moves, it's a sensory receptor. It notices the movement. The hair itself doesn't have neurons in that hair, but there's a sensory receptor wrapped around it. Does that make sense? So if it moves, it sends the signal. That works for us? So it counts as a sensory receptor because, it moves and you notice it. Skin is weird and amazing with its sensory noticing receptive properties. Like you can tell differences in movement. So we're on hair, but I realized on skin, down to less than 0.00001 millimeter, which is like nothing, right? You can also, and this plays into with your skin. If you were digging with like a shovel, and you dug the shovel into, say, sand versus dirt, you could feel that difference, even though you could feel that difference in your hands, even though you're holding the shovel, not touching the dirt. It's just the pressure and vibration slightly, which is phenomenal, right? Like you're not even touching it, but the very subtle differences in texture make it back to your skin. While we're on to skin being weird though, you don't actually have any wet receptors, which seems odd, right? You can detect like microscopic differences in movement, you can detect pain, you can detect different textures super easily. You can't detect wet dry. You can notice it from other things, but you don't have any specific wet things. So like if you ever sit on a wet cold bench, it takes you a while to realize it's wet, not just cold. Does that happen to you? Or you sit on something cold and you're like, is it wet? And you check? Yeah. You notice the temperature, which is why you eventually notice you're wet. But yeah, there's no actual water receptors. That's besides the point. Back to hair. Hair matrix, again, this should look a lot like skin to you. Things are going to be dividing and pushing up. So it's growing from the bottom, pushing up, bottom, pushing up, bottom, pushing up. Alright? So, this happens in biology a lot. And I should have beat this to death with the epidermis. Basically, throughout skin, right, you have, okay, if you have all these cells here, right, we're noticing this one that's marked with an X. As you grow new cells, this gets shoved up. Does that make sense? It's moving because they're being added here, it's pushing up. Yeah. Which is incidentally different from trees. Just, I feel like I should point this out because people, I have a duty with biology. Trees grow a different way. So like, if skin's going like this, where the layers are getting shoved up, right? Trees, on the other hand, if you like make a cut in a tree, like carve your initials or something, that carving initials isn't going to get higher and higher as the tree grows, right? The tree grows from the ends and gets bigger, but where you carved your initials, that's staying put. Are we okay with that distinction? Question though. Now I'm being sneaky. If skin grows like this, how come when people get tattoos, right? So you put ink in the skin, right? How come the tattoos don't come off, right? They raise up, raise up, raise up, raise up, raise up, and come off. You know. Yeah. So what you said, online people, is it's deep. It's not just an epidermal thing. If it is just an epidermal thing, you're done. Which is why those like little rub-on tattoos, right? If you put on the epidermis, that's coming off. Yeah. What am I doing with this? Okay. When you see pili in a word, think hair as well. The erector pili is this little bit of smooth muscle. It's not under voluntary control. It's attached to the hair follicle, and it can pull it up. Here's our picture. Lots going on, right? Yeah. Hair cut long ways. All these nice dead keratinized cells on the outside. It's growing from here. Things are good. Different types of hair, right? There's that really, really soft hair that children have, right? So like, I mean, everybody has hair in their face, but if you look at like a 5-year-old, the hair in his face is very, very soft, right? Adult females also will have that soft, it's called vellus hair. Terminal hair is the coarser type of hair. It shows up on scalp, right? This kind of hair. It shows up in your eyebrows. It shows up in puberty, in the pubic regions, under the armpits, right? For males, it also shows up on the face, right? Nutrition and hormones are going to affect this. And follicles go between a active and regressive phase. So hair is growing from follicles, and it basically turns on and off. Hairs typically grow similar rates for most people. And so hair is growing, it's chugging along, doing its thing. Has anybody here tried to grow their hair out as long as they possibly can? Maybe as a kid? Did anybody get like Rapunzel length hair? Like they could step on it with their toes. Like standing up, they could step on it. Why not? Did you just not wait long enough? Thanks. Yeah, like, so for some reason, like you get to a certain length, and then you're done. Any guesses why? Is it just that the hair like it's long enough, I'm gonna stop growing, and stops actually growing from the follicle? Because how would it know, right? If this terminal hair out here is dead, it shouldn't know how long it is, right? So how come you don't see you don't typically see people who can like stand up and their hair hits the floor? Yeah, exactly. So if you basically have a time limit between when you get to this regressive phase, right? You've got a time limit for how long your hair follicle grows before it's like, I'm done. And it'll start over. But some people have slightly shorter ones than others, and they can't grow their hair out past a certain length. And other people have slightly longer ones that it'll keep growing. It's a longer cycle. And they can grow their hair out slightly longer, but after probably a certain point, it's done, it falls out, and you grow a new one. People are losing about 100 hairs a day, which if you've ever been brushing your hair or combing your hair and they're like, am I going bald? Probably aren't, it's just you lose a lot. So far, so good? Sweet. Yeah. It's a similar reason why your eyebrows don't like get super long, right? Like, there's a time limit before when they fall out, and you grow new ones. Androgens, so male sex hormones, I know we haven't gotten to hormones yet, but male sex hormones are going to promote hair growth, especially, well, they promote hair growth, both for men and women. Typically, men have more male sex hormones, but if you've got a tumor someplace that's like someplace on top of an organ that's producing these, you could really crank up hair production. And then people end up really hairy. The treatment is to remove the tumors, and typically the hairiness is upsetting for people, but that's not the main problem. You don't want random amounts of tumors growing places causing problems, right? But this is, if you've ever seen like old pictures of, somewhat horrifyingly, those like freak shows, right, where it's like, oh, meet the bearded lady, or that kind of thing. This person probably had a tumor that was increasing the amount of androgens they had, and that will increase hair production. We're good? Great, and people can go bald. After about 40, hair thinning happens for both sexes, pretty much. Not super uncommon. For true baldness to happen, I've got hair in my mouth now, and that's gross. Sorry. Ugh. Okay. Where is it? Oh yeah, male pattern baldness. There we go. Is in response to DHT. But you can lose your hairs for lots of reasons. Genetically influenced genetically determined sex influence is the main version, right? Like, okay, some families' baldness runs them more than others. But there are a lot of reasons people can lose their hair. Help me out. Stress. It really actually totally works. Like, stress can make people lose hair. Like, hopefully it doesn't like all fall at once, like, right? But people do lose hair because of stress. Anything else? Genetics, right? So genetics is a big thing. So genetics is the big one. Genetics is a big one. Sex influence has a big deal. But you can also do it if fever can get this done too for people. Surgery, which falls into the stress idea, like you were saying. Again, emotional trauma. Some drugs impact this. If you don't have enough protein, your body decides that there's a hierarchy of needs in the body, and hair is low on the priority list. So nutritional deficiencies, the hair will often suffer first, right? You'll get hair to start having problems. Then there'll be muscle wasting. Basically, the brain wants to be the last one standing. It's like, I need to be okay. The immune system can attack hair follicles too, so autoimmune disorders can cause problems here. And so some of these things you can grow back, right? So like, if there's certain drugs, like certain chemo drugs, people might lose all their hair, but then once they stop the chemo, they can come back. For things like a burn, that's not coming back, because you actually destroy the hair follicle itself. We're good? Alright, on to nails. Nails are hard keratin as well. Ever cut your fingernails way too short? How are you, like, it shouldn't make that much difference, right? But does your life suddenly get harder? How so? What is no longer easy? First of all, it hurts. If you cut fingernails like too short, you're not paying attention. It's like, I made terrible choices. But like, opening things is sometimes harder, right? Picking certain things up is harder. Yeah. It does provide a little bit of protection. I mean, both of them are like, stay back. I had a cousin who, she had a lot of brothers, but I'm not sure if this is the reason why. When she was about 9, she'd cut her fingernails into spikes, just to be like, back off. Be like, oh, okay. She was scary. Anyways, but so they are somewhat protective. Mostly though, they provide a hard back to push against. So the pads of your fingers and your toes to a certain extent are very sensitive, right? They're also kind of squishy. So if you have all these sensory receptors here and you've got a hard back, as this pushes up, it doesn't just mush. If your finger was all completely soft and didn't have a nail, you wouldn't be able to notice quite such fine details, because as it pushed, it wouldn't have anything to push against. Does that make some level of sense? We're okay with that? Yeah. So there's several parts. It's helpful to have the picture. Here's the nail we're looking at sideways, right? This is the part that you ever get a splinter under there. You're like, ow. The nail bed is this part it's epidermis, and it's under the nail plate. So this nail plate is the part that's hard. Nail bed's right under it. The nail matrix is where it's actually growing from. Right, it's coming out. This is probably actually the best example of how things are growing. Nails are growing out, not up. Does that make sense? And if you've ever dropped a hammer on your finger or something and seen it go white, right? That eventually grows out. Questions? You've got back here. You've got some skin folds that overlap the edge of the nail, right? If something goes wrong, this gets pulled off and it hurts. The cuticle you can officially call, if you really want to, the epinocrinum, which is just a cuticle. It's right here. It's part of the nail fold, so part like this, part of the nail fold that overlaps that border of the nail. The hypocrinum is the part that you get dirt under. You've got the edge, and if you're down like most of your nails, at the very base of your nail bed, you can see like a little half moon shape, depending on how far up your cuticles are. That is part of the nail matrix and it looks white. If that changes color, people are worried about your oxygenation level. They're like, oh, huh. So like ER nurses will sometimes check beds of people's nails, be like, what color is that? And here's the picture. Great. We're okay with nails so far? Enough going on? Okay, we're on to sweat glands. Question. When you were like a little kid, and you run around outside and get sweaty, you wouldn't stink, right? Like, you just would sweat but be fine. But then about probably somewhere between 11 and 13, once you got sweaty, you started to smell weird. Right? Is that true? I mean, not you personally, but people in general? What changed? Many things. You're like, this was a rough time in my life. Basically, that middle school time. Middle school is a weird time personally, from a biological point of view, right? Because you've got kids who are like, yay tall, and have very high-pitched squeaky voices. And then you've got kids who are like shaving, right? You're like, whoa, okay. There's a lot going on there. Sweat glands. Moving on to sweat glands. All over the place. Other than parts of reproductive organs, so nipples and some genitalia, sweat glands are everywhere. Like you've got sweat glands on your eyelids. Okay? They come in two types, apocrine and eccrine. And the nervous system is talking to these glands, and they're gonna, your nervous system is tell your sweat glands when to like release sweat into your ducts. Most of your sweat glands are these merocrine types. They're why your palms get sweaty, right? They secrete sweat, and their big job is to help with temperature control. How does this help? Remind me. This is like.
When it evaporates, heat transfer.
Exactly, right? Like it takes heat to evaporate it off. So you basically keep yourself damp a little bit as it gets hot. As your body provides heat to this, it evaporates and cools you down. It's the same way, minus the electricity part. It's basically the same way an air conditioner can work, right? Evaporative cooling. It's great. All over the place. It's producing sweat. Basically, sweat's water. Anything else that it is? Anything else in sweat? Salt, right? If you are running or doing something like and it gets into your mouth, you're like it tastes salty, right? Also, water, some salt. It's gonna have some vitamin C come out as well. Some antibodies are produced there too, which is nice because it's a convenient way to get antibodies on your skin. Why do you want antibodies on your skin? Yeah, you're just like, let's just kill them before they even get in, right? So it's that role isn't so much for thermoregulation. It's just like, sure, let's dump it out while we can. You get rid of a little bit of metabolic wastes, but not tons, right? So things like your liver and your kidney are going to be doing the lion's share of getting rid of metabolic wastes, but your skin does some too. Like you might notice if somebody's been drinking alcohol before, and then you smell them fly later when they sweat, you can smell it on them, right? It's coming out through their skin. Yeah. Here are pictures. We're looking at this one right here. Note there are these ones here. We're looking at this little guy. Just an eccrine gland, sweat, nervous system says go. It's going to release it out to the skin. Move on. Okay. Apocrine sweat glands are the ones that basically turn on at puberty. They're not all over the place. You don't have these on your forehead. You don't have them on the palms of your hand. They're mostly in the genital region and under your armpits. All right. They secrete sweat, but it's a slightly more protein-rich sweat. It's got more goo in it, which by itself doesn't smell bad, but when microbes eat it, their waste product stinks to humans. It's not actually known what the point of it is. So most books talk about like probably something related to reproduction. That being said, that's kind of a cop-out. It's kind of like when archaeologists find something, they're like, I have no idea what the heck this thing is for, and so then they say, it was for some ceremonial function. We're like, okay, maybe, but like maybe you just don't know their specific type of potato masher, right? These, like, if you don't have these, your life isn't any worse, as far as we can tell. But who knows? Modified sweat glands are basically the exact same thing as these African sweat glands. So African sweat glands, they're secreting sweat that's got some more protein in it. It's a little bit thicker. It's got some more goo. It's got some fat in it. If you modify that slightly, you end up with two different substances, depending on how those glands are modified. You can modify it to make earwax, which is basically just a certain kind of lipid, right? Anybody know what the point of earwax is? Right, because like your ears produce wax. No other place in your body is like actively producing wax, as far as you're aware, right? Hopefully not. Creepy, you don't have to say if you've done this or not, but have you ever smelled earwax? Anybody want to help us out? What does it smell like? It's somewhat strong, right? It's a bug repellent. Like, it legitimately repels insects. If we all imagine for a minute insects living inside your ears? Yeah. An ear would be a nice place for an insect to hang out, right? Because it's moist. It's somewhat enclosed. There's some nice little proteins it could chew on, right? It would be sorry, am I creeping out, Katie? You okay? Sorry, okay. Oh, I'm gonna back up on imagery here. Okay. It would be a lovely happy home for an insect. And you really, really, really don't want that. Earwax helps prevent that. So, yay. Okay, sorry, I'll rein it back in. And the mammary glands secrete milk, it's weird to think of milk as sweat, because it's not sweat. But it's the same basic idea. You're gonna get some water, some proteins, some fat. Back up here, the idea of, yeah, let's put some vitamins, some minerals, who knows, just stuff everything in there. It can get that done. Questions or concerns about this? Nope, okay, we're good. We're gonna see, next semester, assuming we're all here, not living in huts and, I don't know, whatever it is, we'll see more of milk production when we talk about the reproductive system. Okay, and then you've got oil glands too. Sebaceous glands, oil glands, all over the place. Every place that you have thin skin. So thick skin is palms and the soles of your feet. They don't have these. You'll sweat a lot out of your palms, your soles, but you don't actually produce oil there. And the reason is you don't have hair there, right? So these ones don't act all that much until puberty. And then, as you might have realized, if acne plagued your life, which plagued so many of our lives, they start increasing their activity. They're stimulated by hormones. Basically the answer for anything in puberty is like, yeah, probably hormones, right? Increased or decreased and started to do things. They're called sebaceous glands. They secrete sebum. It's this oily substance. It kills bacteria, and it softens your hair and skin a little bit. If you've ever used like super anti-oil face wash, you'll notice your skin dries out. And these ones are over here. We're looking at, so that was just our regular effluent sweat gland. Those ones are there. And if those get blocked, right? You're trying to produce oil, gets blocked up. That's what people call a blackhead. Well, it's white at first because the oily substance is just white. If it starts to get oxidized, basically it's not really rusted, but it starts to get oxidized, it goes black. It's a blackhead. And then if these facial glands get inflamed, they're somehow irritated, you'll get pimples, right? So suddenly, so the reason it's especially tricky for kids in puberty is because everything suddenly turns on, the body hasn't exactly learned how to regulate it, right? So inflammation of these glands happen. The other time you see this, and it's slightly different, is something called cradle cap. It doesn't happen for all babies, but some babies have this like weird scaly stuff on their head. It's not dandruff. It's these little lesions. They flake off. Babies have a hard time regulating their hormonal level too at first. It's not dangerous. It's just concerning for people sometimes. They're like, why is my baby shedding? Other things that freak people out, if we're wanting to talk about things that freak people out about babies, infant girls sometimes will have like a little tiny period, like as soon as they're born. They'll have like a little mini period basically, just because they have a whole bunch of their mom's hormones in them, and that freaks parents out. They're like, my child is bleeding, and the doc's like, that happens, not to worry. And they're like, are you sure? And they're like, no, it's just a period. And they're like, whoa, this kid is like a day old, they can't be having a period. And the doc's like, they'll stop, not to worry. Anyways, we're good? Okay, so up till now that was supposed to be the like anatomy of stuff. We're gonna go through the physiology of things a little bit more. I realize we've seen some of this, but it's gonna be a repeat. Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Want us to keep going? Probably got 5 minutes early. Or not? Okay, you nods. All right, we saw this before. Skin's gonna be helpful as protection. It's gonna regulate body temperature in a couple ways. It's going to do sensations. It's going to have metabolic functions. It holds a ton of your blood. It's going to do some waste excretion. Also, I don't think I told you this in the anatomy part. Your skin, depending on how big you are, is about 10 to 15 pounds, which is surprisingly heavy. Your skin acts as a barrier in 3 different ways. And whenever I see things like this list of 3, I'm like, I should make a quiz question about this. Which 3 ways does skin act as a barrier? Something like that, right? Most obvious one is the physical barrier, but there are 3 different versions here. So the chemical, first of all, it can act as basically a chemical barrier between things. So it's going to secrete sweat, which has a bunch of antimicrobial properties, right? So sweat's there helping kill things. Some cells also secrete this little protein called defensin, which is kind of clever. It's called that. That also kills microbes. Also, your skin is slightly acidic, just a little bit, but that makes it somewhat hostile towards bacteria. And if we're still on the chemical idea, that melanin inside your skin chemically protects against UV radiation, because it can absorb some of that radiation, and then that radiation doesn't hurt your DNA. And the physical barrier is the keep stuff out. So you've got all these flat, dead, keratinized cells, right? Tough. It's basically trying to saran wrap you, okay? Most water-based substances you can keep out. Eventually, some get through, but most water-based substances stay out. Okay, so like you could hold your hand in a glass of orange juice, and you're not like sucking in the orange juice that way. Okay. But some stuff does go through. So like if you're say eating off of lead dishes, or if you're touching lead a bunch, some of these heavy metals can actually go through your skin. It's kind of a bad deal. Ancient Romans used lead oxide. It's really white. They used it as a makeup. Yeah, not good. Very, very not good. Lead poisoning is real, people. A lot of oil-based things. So people have touched poison ivy before and then regretted it, right? Oil-based, it can go in. Paint thinner will do this. Basically, non-polar things cross reasonably well. Like you're not, your skin isn't a sponge necessarily, but it can keep polar things out better than it can keep non-polar things out. And then, wait, I did the wrong way. There we go. So we've got chemical reasons that stops things from coming, physical reasons that stops things from coming, and then there's also biological reasons. So basically, there are a bunch of cells that eat stuff. So the epidermis has these phagocytes. They're cells that chew things up. They'll Pac-Man around some sort of foreign invader, and then show its toe. It's called phagocytosis. They basically swallow it, and then they show it to white blood cells. They're like, look, it's dangerous. And white blood cells will be like, we're on it. Okay? Briefly. The immune system is complicated, people. And then the dermis, which is deeper, has macrophages, which are also going to do a similar job. And they're going to be roaming around doing this. So far, so good? Sweet. And then there's body temperature. What did I do? You want to keep your body at a fairly reasonable temperature, right? You don't want to go too high, you don't want to go too low. Do people know about how much a liter is? Right? People are familiar with that concept? Okay. Does somebody want to act out how much a liter is for us? How big are we talking? Yeah? You can think of like a liter of soda? Okay. You're going to sweat about half of that a day. Just without even noticing it. Even if it's cold and it's winter and you're not noticing anything, you're just going to be chilling. You'll probably lose about 500 milliliters of sweat a day. It's called insensible perspiration. You don't even notice it, it's just happening. It's kind of running in the background. If you get too warm, right? You get too warm, the vessels in your dermis, so the epidermis doesn't have blood vessels, but the dermis does. Those blood vessels will dilate, they'll get bigger. And blood is slightly warmer than the rest of your body. It's carrying more heat. Which you might have noticed, if blood ever rushes to your face gets warmer, right? Blood's carrying heat. So your body gets too hot, your dermal blood vessels dilate. It heats up your skin. So you're gonna then sweat. You'll actively noticeably sweat. You can get about 3 gallons of sweat loss a day if you really, really, really want to. It's kind of pushing it. Be careful. Drink water. It cools you down, and then in cold environments you can do the opposite thing. Your extremities constrict. Sorry, your dermal blood vessels constrict, and your skin temperature drops because you're trying to protect heat loss. Anybody know what happens if you get really cold and your dermal vessels completely shrink down, and places like your fingers and toes, your body's like, listen, our main concern is like the viscera and the brain, so we're just gonna not send blood to our toes. What happens? Frostbite, right? You got cold enough that your body's like, does it really need oxygen? No, probably not, right? And tissue dies. Yeah. That's why also, a step before frostbite, when your fingers or toes get cold, you start doing the rubbing thing, right? A little bit for friction, but also you're trying to encourage blood flow there. You're like, come on, bring some heat in. Okay. So your skin can help keep you warm or cold. It's adjustable both directions. It also is going to be picking up for sensations, cutaneous sensations. So it's the cutaneous membrane, right, skin. Cutaneous sensations are just things that are picked up by the skin. These sensory receptors count as part of the nervous system, right, but they're in the skin. They're called exteroreceptors are picking up things outside, so things like temperature or touch, right? Here's a picture. Lots of things going on here. So we've got, not all of them are shown here, but we see, they have only one label here, yeah, okay. Free nerve endings here, picking up things like pain. This receptor right here, it's called the lamellar corpuscle. It's kind of poofy. It notices if it gets squashed, right? So if it gets deformed, it picks up pressure. Over here, we've got the hair follicle receptor. It notices if this moves, right? There are so many versions of cutaneous receptors. We're saving this for sensation. But just your skin can pick up lots of different sensations. All right, how are we doing on time? I'm still not gonna get done through. I toned it back and only included like one comic. I realize comics aren't that helpful, but it's still not gonna. I talk too much apparently. Okay. So skin's got some protective functions and also some metabolic functions. Big role for metabolism. Better question. We were told like go outside, get some sunshine. For the vitamin D, right? Skin can make vitamin D. The precursor molecule is chilling. It's inside of you. At the right wavelength of UV light, you can bounce it up to have enough energy to convert to vitamin D. Yeah. So vitamin D is the big one. Also, your skin is going to help a little bit against carcinogens, things that promote cancer. So the epidermis in general, the integumentary system in general understands, physiologically, understands rapidly dividing cells, right? It divides so rapidly, so quickly, right? And so it's got some fairly impressive anti-cancer mechanisms because cancer is out of control cell growth. So since the system's already prepared for really rapid growth, having some sort of built-in safeguards is a good idea, right? So there are some anti-carcinogenic factors that your skin can help with. Also, some hormones are gonna be activated by skin cells. Your skin's also going to help collagen cycle through. Another role that skin has is a blood reservoir. It's going to hold a fair chunk of your body's blood. So any given time you've got blood all over the place, it's going to hold about 5% of your body's blood. And if you need other blood you need blood someplace or another, you can pull out the skin, right? You can constrict those blood vessels and push it to an organ. You might have seen this if you've seen somebody who wasn't planning an exercise, they exercise and they get a little bit pale. Have you ever seen that? They'll also get red. If they get hot, they'll get red. But sometimes people are exercising and they go oddly pale. They're pulling the blood out to their muscles. Have people seen this? Okay. If you exercise a ton, it's not quite as likely, but you know. Yeah. Oh, it's not entirely known why people blush. Like physiologically, it's known, right? People feel stressed, and some people it's more prominent than others. People feel stressed. They'll shunt blood to their faces, right? They'll go pink a little bit. Um, it's supposed to be helpful. Well, why is this helpful? If you're suddenly feeling stressed, or the person you're romantically attracted to, but they don't know this yet, comes and talks to you, or everybody's suddenly looking at you and you feel scared, why is it at all helpful to suddenly change colors? Like, you don't like it, I'm guessing. You're like, stop doing it. Any possible help this could be? Yeah. Most books say, most researchers say, oh, it probably has something to do with, it's helpful for other people, it's advantageous for other people to know that you're feeling stressed, because then they're not like, because then they're nicer to you, basically. They're like, oh, they're trying, or oh, they realize they messed up, and they're basically, their body's apologizing for it already. For some reason it happens, and it's a nervous system response. Alright, and then excretion. You can get rid of a little bit of nitrogenous wastes. Nitrogen's the stuff that's, for most of your body, when you're trying to get rid of waste, you're trying to, not like feces, but physical stuff, but chemically, you're trying to get rid of the leftovers from metabolism. So as you break down nutrients, as you break down food into nutrients, you end up with a lot of nitrogen that you need to get out of you. It shows up as like ammonia or urea or uric acid. Your skin can get rid of a little bit of it, but you're also going to lose a lot of water and salt. So do replace those. We're good? Questions? Alright. A quick internet search. If you don't do this, because it makes you paranoid, and you've enough to be paranoid now already. But if you type into like WebMD on the internet just because you're, maybe trying to make this lecture slightly more interesting, and look for like skin conditions or ailments, the list's more than 1,000. You're like, whoa. I didn't even know there were some of these options. Like, some of them, like, okay, yeah, like, sure. Psoriasis or whatever, like, okay, whatever. But the list is long. The skin is big. It's part of the thing. A lot of things are going on, right? So there's both internal forces that can affect it, but also external forces. So some people might get like hives from something. But also lots of internal diseases show up on the skin. So something like Addison's disease, which is a hormonal problem, the skin's gonna change color, right? It's an indicator for some things. A lot of infections show up there. The ones that are really, really scary are skin cancers and burns. Those are the ones that it's really hard for the skin to recover from. So there are a lot of skin tumors that are benign. So cells are growing, but they don't have intentions of invading other tissue. They just grow. They might not be dying like they should, but they're not like actively trying to colonize other parts of your body. Alright? So they don't spread. When they spread, it's called metastasizing, right? But sometimes there are skin cancers where these tumors are not benign. They're cancerous, right? A lot of UV radiation is what typically sets this off. So the DNA of those skin cells gets damaged, um, and the cells can become cancerous. There are three types of skin cancer, three major types. Basal cell, and you probably now have some vague idea of where this is. Squamous cell, and then melanoma. Right? Oh, I did put two comics in. Okay. We're good? Moving on? Okay. Basal cell carcinoma, most common, least dangerous. Remind me where this basal layer is. Top, bottom? Yep, basal layer. They grow, it's a tumor. It's usually fairly easy to solve because it just gets cut out, and then it's not usually that dangerous. Like, do get taken care of, that kind of thing, but it's the least malignant. Squamous cell carcinoma is not quite as common, but it's reasonably common. It can metastasize. It's kind of scary. I mean, it's scary, get it taken care of, but it's not super scary. Usually, there's some surgery to remove the tumor. Some radiation can, take care of the last little bit, and you should be fine. In some picture like this, the lighting's not great here. These are so back up here, basal cell. These were base layer cells. Here, these keratinocytes, they're in that spiny layer, right? It's a little bit higher up. Finally, the one that's dangerous, I mean, they're all dangerous, but the one that's really dangerous is melanoma. Have you heard of this, melanoma? Yeah, you probably get told, wear sunscreen, etc. Okay. Melanoma is the type that's really dangerous. Not because it's super common, it's actually less common. It's really dangerous because it's very metastastic, meaning it goes for the gusto and wants to spread. So it spreads, and it's hard to get rid of. Typically, the way people try to treat it is they cut out, surgically they cut out chunks, but they kind of have to go big because it's not just like one kind of spot, it's spread. And then they try to just dump the treatments on it. Typically, if you're looking for some picture, melanomas look kind of like moles, but they're going to be somewhat different in that they're not going to be symmetrical typically. They're going to be like oddly shaped. They'll also be like lumpy a little bit. There'll be indentations, and they're going to be typically larger. So like moles, you can expect up to about the size of like a pencil eraser, right? With melanomas, they can get kind of big. And they can be this blackish purplish color. They could also be tan. Sometimes they're like reddish bluish. But yeah, they're definitely a thing. Concerns about this? Basically, if you have, and again, I am not a physician, okay? But if you have some like weird looking mole thing that's getting bigger and bigger, talk to your friendly healthcare provider. Right? Like, hey, look, it's growing. Okay. Concerns? Questions? Okay. Burns. Burns are scary. And we have 10 minutes, okay. We totally can get this done. Burns are really scary. And so burns are gonna be when you damage the tissue. So the problem isn't like, oh, it's not like a microbe has invaded and you can fight with the immune system. problem is you physically break your skin, right? And it's caused by the same reason you can, like, cook eggs, right? You denature the proteins. So, proteins in response to high heat change shape. You can also, if you ever tried, like, pouring strong acid on an egg, you can kind of cook it. It'll change the proteins as well, just so you know. So heat will do this, electricity can do this, try not to get struck by lightning, and certain chemicals can also do this. So it'll destroy the cells. The big first problem is you lose too much water. You lose too much water too fast. You lose too much water too fast because you basically punched a hole in your skin. You also, the electrolyte imbalance is shot to pieces. And when that happens, your kidneys and your circulatory system shut down. Like, it cannot handle this fast enough. That's the really scary part with burns right away. Yeah? Because Nate, can you keep your mask on, please? Thanks. In law, or criminal justice, anybody here know anything about criminal justice? Yeah, okay. Me neither. But, in law, which one's worse? First degree murder or third degree murder? First degree, right? First degree murder is like premeditated or somehow worse than third degree murder, right? Okay. Burns have an opposite naming strategy. First degree is not that big of a deal. Thanks. Yeah. So this is the kind that, like, it's sore, it's red, it's swollen, it hurts, but you're cool, right? Second degree burns, so first degree burns are only hitting the epidermis, right? Just the outer layer. It hurts, not great, but only the epidermis. Second degree, you get the epidermis and you also get the dermis. And these ones are the ones that really hurt. These are the ones that'll blister. Like, when you say, oh, I've been burned, that's typically what you mean. When you got blisters, right? This hurts. This is not good. But this is still only first and second degree burns. So first degree burns right here, right, red. Second degree burns, the skin's blistered up. Yeah? And burns really, really hurt, right? There's so many sensory receptors right there, and they just really hurt. Third degree burns, you've got the entire skin. Third degree burns actually don't hurt because you've destroyed the nerve endings. Like, when things start to come back, it hurts a lot. But the third degree burn area itself doesn't hurt because those nerves are gone. And they look really, really scary. People who are somewhat squeamish, just so you know, there's a picture that makes people feel somewhat squeamish. The skin is gone. You're down to deeper tissue. Skin looks black or bright red. And that skin's not coming back because the cells themselves have been destroyed. So if this happens, skin grafting is needed. You need to take skin from someplace else and put it on there to basically reseed the area. We're okay with that? Yeah, burns are critical, like life-threatening, if about a quarter of the body has second-degree burns, or about 10% of the body has third-degree burns, or if the face, hands, or feet have third-degree burns. This is very, very medically scary. And how it's treated is this is the part that really hurts, and people who've been severely burned don't talk about this. I had a cousin who, when he was 12, he was goofing around next to a fire pit and just all down the side of his face. And his dad pulled him out, and yeah, they lighted him and the whole works. But yeah, poor lad, buddy. Anyways, they come in with basically a scrub brush and just take off the dead skin because they gotta get off because otherwise it's gonna get infected and gross. Then they dump a ton of antibiotics on you, like, good luck, try not to get infected. Because your skin's such a good does such a good job of keeping the outside world out. They really, really try to keep you sterile. And then they kind of just like wrap you up a little bit to let things chill for a while and keep the outside world out. And then they go for the skin grafts, right after things have settled down a little bit. Concerns? Questions? We're good? Okay, that's what we've got, and we're actually like exactly 5 minutes done, so we're done. I will see you in lab. I was going to have it be on skin, but now I'm going to see if I can do something more hands-on.